Morning. Today is Tuesday, December 19th, 2017. Happy, healthy holiday to everyone here. This is a regular meeting of the Los Angeles Board of Police Commissioners. Madam Secretary, please call the roll.
Good morning. Let the record reflect Commissioners Sobroff, Goldsmith, and McLean Hill are present, and we have a quorum.
Okay, I'm sorry.
Go ahead. Number one on the consent agenda items.
We're going to move the consent agenda items. We have a busy schedule today. We'll move that until after closed session before adjournment. So let's go right to item number 2A, please.
2A, regular agenda items. Department's report dated December 6, 2017, relative to the supplemental police account third quarterly report, July through September 2017.
Do any commissioners want to see the report or have any questions? Or may we just go to any comments on this report? Let's go to, do we have any comments?
We have one public comment card. We have Mr. Herman.
This is item number 2A.
Good morning. Yes, Mr. Sobroff, I know what item we're on. I don't suffer from mental health. Although the department's report, comma, dated December 6, comma, 2017, comma, relative to the supplemental police account. Do any of you know what the supplemental police account is? Can the Inspector General suggest what that means? Apparently not, because we don't have an Inspector General to talk about the police account. We don't have a commission that speaks about the account. We have a conflict of interest because this commission should not be in this department, in order that the police account reflects only for police and Chief Charlie Beck, and this commission would run the order of business for the third quarterly report for and through July of September. BPC number 170479. Was there any recommendation? No. Why not? Public should know why. Has Mr. Sobroff taken his meds? No, because he approved the department's report and that of the city council. And the city council is a municipal corporation.
Mr. President, speaker's off topic.
Off topic, last warning, Mr. Herman.
So the department's report of this supplemental police account, if you can read, there's nothing written here for us to contest against. So this reflects bad business, bad organization.
We have a motion for approval of item 2A, please. Second, all in favor? Aye. Anyone opposed? Okay. Go to
Item 2B, Department's report dated December 6, 2017, relative to the grant application and award for National Institute of Justice FY 2017 DNA Capacity Enhancement and Backlog Reduction Program. We have one card, sir.
Okay, well, we've read this regarding the grant. Are there any questions by the commissioners or any report required? Then let's go right to the public comment.
We have Mr. Herman.
Good morning again. Do you know what DNA is? Do you know what the DNA capacity is? How does it identify sexual predators or sexual misconduct? Well, apparently the department has awarded or has been awarded a National Institute by the Justice for 2017. But what about the capacity of unprecedented, unaccounted for DNA? Meaning that those people that he accused based on their DNA whether it's a fact or not proven under the due process. The question is, how does the backlog reduction program work? I'll tell you how it works. You first go to jail. And then when you're in jail, guess what happens? You sit there for months and time in, thinking about a crime that you did not do.
Mr. President, speaker's off topic. This is about a grant award.
This has to do with DNA, sir.
It's about a grant award.
Off topic. Last warning.
So to reflect on the BPC number 170480, and that currently to the mayor and the city council, we demand that only and solely for the purpose of this grant award be spent only and specifically for the capacity of enhancement of this grant application. Because in the past, the awards of the grants have been utterly, mistakenly abused and used for other items of this police commission's agenda.
We have a motion for approval of item number 2B, please. All in favor? Aye. Item number 2C.
2C, relative to the bias policing and mediation update, third quarter 2017. Mr. Herman?
Are there any, Commissioner, I have one question, but. Any, when do you have a seat? Mr. Herman, don't raise your hands anymore. If you raise your hands anymore, that'll be the second time disturbing the meeting, and I will ask you to leave the meeting. I have a couple of questions or comments, but do you want to make a little?
No, good morning. My name is Mike Himes. I'm the commanding officer, Internal Affairs Group, and I was just going to present a brief synopsis and take any questions, but I'm perfectly willing to go to any questions you have first.
Yeah, I thought it was interesting that 86% of the people who participated were somewhat likely or very likely to recommend the process to others. From an officer's perspective, that was even greater. It was 95%. I thought that I didn't understand. It said that in response to the request to consider expanding the program to more types of public complaints, the mediation coordinator is working within IAG's complaint classification unit. Do you want to talk about the potential expansion?
Mr. Sobroff,
Yes.
is it possible that we could have just a report on the item first?
Sure.
Thank
Yeah, I didn't know
you.
if you want that.
Yeah,
Go
I
ahead.
did. Thank you.
Well, certainly. This is the 2017 third quarter report, and what I wanted to say is that the distribution of complaints and dispositions remains fairly consistent and stable over time, especially over the last 3 years. We're on track this year for approximately 213 bias policing complaints, which is a little bit down over 15, 16, but consistent with 14. That number will probably increase a little bit as dispositions come in, as we add additional complaints after they're adjudicated after the first of the year. But still, the numbers are down a little bit. Because of the size of the numbers, it may not be statistically significant, but they are down a little bit. One of the things we see is that traffic stops and radio calls continue to be the types of encounters that generate the most bias policing complaints, with racial and ethnic bias being the most predominant type of complaint made. Consistent with prior years, we have, out of the complaints that were adjudicated, the allegations of bias, 328 of 379 were classified as unfounded. Of course, others were mediated. There was one not resolved. Some were insufficient evidence to adjudicate, and a variety of other, types of dispositions. Sometimes complaints were sustained that had nothing to do with bias, but they may be, some other type of activity. I did want to draw attention, and thank you, Mr. Sobroff, to the mediation issues. We continue to try to push mediation for some of those very reasons that you mentioned, the satisfaction, the ability to understand other people's perspectives. If you notice, it seemed like mediations, the number of mediations were down this year, 14 as compared to 30 in prior years. Well, actually, at this point in time, we have 25 and we have 28 scheduled actually before the holiday, the Christmas holiday, and we anticipate, being back to that 30 again for this year in mediations. Sergeant Talbot, who's our mediation coordinator, is making a concerted effort to go out and do supervisory training, roll call training, and those types of things to increase the understanding the availability and the benefits of engaging in mediation. So we think we're going to see additional results on that. As far as increasing the types of complaints that may be subject to mediation, as you know, in 2015 we added discourtesy as a type of complaint. One of the things we're looking at is the very, I don't want to minimize a complaint about an unlawful search as being minimal, but that's the type of complaint that may be subject to mediation, where he says, well, the officer searched me and I think it was based on whatever the case may be, or didn't have any right to search me. That may be the type of complaint that we look at. Those are some of the things we're exploring that, that we'll want to, discuss with you.
Okay. Questions, Commissioner?
Yeah, I have a couple questions. Can you tell me a little bit about the role that that our body cams now play in our ability to determine whether these complaints are founded or unfounded?
Well, yes, I can. As a matter of fact, we found that about 106 of the complaints that were adjudicated had a role in our body camera video, or some type of video had a role in our was able to assist in disposition. I should take that back. I think there were 107 complaints that had the availability of some type of video. Of those 80, the body camera video was able to, help assist in that adjudication. One of the things that changed in mid-2016 is we're able to use video to determine whether a complaint at its inception is demonstrably false. And we have had 6 so far year to date, which we've been able to show are demonstrably false based upon the availability of video. At the same time, video is, or audio does help reveal what actually occurred out at the scene. So I think as we see more video come into play, we'll have better information and better data in that area.
Yeah, I continue to be less than. This complaint system, from my perspective, represents a measure of how our interactions are viewed by the citizens that we serve, but certainly not the only measure of significance. So I wonder. I know that we had in our budget a tool that we were also using to measure, how we are perceived in the community, and I'm curious as to whether or not, or where we stand with respect to utilization of that tool, in order to round out certainly my understanding of the degree to which we are. Our practices are being perceived as less than satisfactory in communities across Los Angeles.
Well, I don't know if it's appropriate for Mike to answer that. I think that Sean's here, and Sean, you want to talk about the rollout of the next iteration of our community surveys?
Thank you.
Can we do that during this?
It's related to bias
Okay,
policing.
good. Sean?
Hi, I'm Sean Malinowski. I'm Chief of Staff for Chief Beck. We did conduct a phone survey last year, and we used grant money to fund that. This year, we were able to get that into the budget. It cost about $100,000. That was approved. We have to go through the city procurement process. So last year, went through the foundation, and we had a vendor in Washington, D.C. This year, we have to, we're going to be bidding that out. We're trying to keep the survey as close to the original survey so we could benchmark progress. So we're in that process now of looking at multiple vendors. We also have another initiative that will take advantage of mobile devices. So rather than just making 2,000 phone calls, which is kind of what usually happens, between 2,000 and 2,500 phone calls, we're trying to get a more diverse and younger demographic to participate. And so there is some technology available to do that now. It's considerably more expensive, and so we're trying to raise some money. And we've talked to Commissioner Johnson and to our foundation about raising money to do that. In that case, we would be conducting these surveys full-time. So we would constantly be trying to get to those devices and measure people's sentiment.
And would that device be more malleable for specific incidents or inquiries?
Yeah, so we could, because of the nature of that technology, we could change the questions as things come up if we have critical incidents occur, and it will let us get, instead of just this blanket survey that we've done, which gives us some insight, this will give us constant reinforcement on that, and you can see changes over time down to the basic car area. So we're excited about that possibility.
And so you can target various areas that have different issues and use different questions to address those issues?
Yes, that's right. So you could, if you had a critical incident occur, or if we had an intervention that we wanted to try, we would get more immediate feedback on that. So on this, on the one survey, the issue is bidding out to other vendors, and on this method, it's raising the money to do it.
So a couple of questions. So first, with respect to the survey, can you give me a time frame as to when has an RFP been issued?
No, it hasn't.
And do you have a time frame as to when that might occur?
Yes, so I would expect that we could have something in January to bid out, and probably March or so before we'd get a vendor selected.
All right. And then with respect to the report itself, I mean, while I, again, think that this is not the most effective way looking at complaints to determine, for feedback in certain areas of policing. I am curious that we see this concentration in particular kinds of interactions. Different from sort of critical incidents, it's the day-to-day interaction that is consistently, proving to be where these complaints arise. So is there any either analysis, thought, or can you tell me what, if any, conclusions the department has drawn, and if there is any specific strategy to better prepare officers for these interactions in a way that might address community concerns? In other words, we've done surveys. We have these complaints. We have the reports. I get the found it, not found it, can't figure it out, and all of that. And I don't want to belabor that. But if it's patrol stops, or if it's the traffic stops, if there's specific interactions that seem to be the places where we draw these complaints, what do we do about that? How do we approach? What do we think about it? How do we address it? How do we deal with that? And the fact that it's consistent over time suggests that perhaps there's something, that we might have some strategies to address it.
So before either one of them answers that, first, please address some of the things we're doing: bias policing training, our cultural awareness training, all of those type of things that build empathy and understanding for officers. But I would also point out that part of this is about volume. This measures numbers of complaints. So the number of complaints sometimes is influenced by volume of activity. and traffic stops are far and away our highest volume. We issue
Fair point.
200,000 to 400,000 citations every year, do another 50,000 warnings, and that's a lot of people being stopped. And you know, the very nature of traffic stops begs the question, why me? Because all of us think that, well, I'm not the only one out here that's speeding or doing whatever. I mean, that's just human nature. So, and part of that why me answer is tied up into a biased policing investigation.
Well, no, and I do understand that, and I think that is a fair point, but I also am aware of studies that, not looking at our department, but most recently in Northern California, looking at body cams, and in particular looking at traffic stops and the degree to which they revealed a distinction that was notable in terms of the language used and the attitudes presented based on the race of the party being stopped.
Well, that is very unfortunate for that other department that they have that kind of activity.
As I said, I understand it was not our department, but I also indicated that taking in the aggregate our own survey results, our own distribution of complaints, and evidence that is more general but not specific to this department, I am just curious about, or not curious, interested in ensuring that we are being focused and diligent, and not just focused and diligent, but also that we have some metric by which we're measuring impact and results of the work that we are doing in order to both improve perceptions and also improve experiences that underlie those perceptions of the citizens that we seek to serve, and to serve in in the most effective manner with the highest standards. So I will leave it at that for a moment. I will, however, be looking for a broader discussion of these issues in the upcoming quarter, so early next year, and appreciate the continued reporting. I also do want to acknowledge and to highlight, as did Commissioner Soboroff, the mediation program. I think at the end of the day that we're going to have to get to a much more human level as we start to try to work through this persistent disconnect. I will leave it at that, except to say I appreciate the department's efforts across a range of work, but do want to see this engaged by this commission again in a much more thorough and impactful way.
Yes.
Commissioner Goldsmith?
Also just want to acknowledge the department's work, the mediation program in particular, the implicit bias training, and the other work you're doing to address issues of racial bias, and echo the Commissioner McLean-Hill's comments about the importance of the community survey, that we do that as soon as possible and take the results very seriously as we do these quarterly reports and the analysis of the complaints on racial bias.
But you can speak during public comment. What you can't. Okay, so that's your final warning. If you do it again, I'll ask you to leave. And to the ladies, same thing. You have plenty of time during public comment to speak. If you want to speak, otherwise it's disturbing the meeting. My final question on this is, you've got something that works. You got 86% of the people think that it works. It's hard to get 86% of the people to think that anything works. How do you do more of it? How do we outreach to get more officers, to get more complainants involved. I see the reasons why people choose to do it. I see the reasons why people choose not to do it. This works. It's not the end all. It's very limited, like the commissioner said. But what's our plan to try and get the numbers up?
I think success begets success, and one of the things that we're doing, we're trying to do more and more outreach, not just in the within the department, for supervisors to be aware of it, for the officers to be aware of it. The more officers that have positive experiences with it, the more they're going to tell their peers, who are going to be more willing to engage in doing it. The same thing is true in the community, in our community outreach basis, whether it's through the dispute resolution program from the city attorney's office. As the word is out that this is a valuable mutual understanding type of encounter, our hope is that helps grow it.
Okay. We need to approve the department's report. Is that something? So we'll take a motion to approve the department's report on item number 2C.
We do have 3 cards.
Oh,
sir.
you have comment cards?
Yes. We have Mr. Herman, Adam Smith, and Michael Williams.
We have 3. Herman?
Mr. Herman?
You waiving your time? This is item number 2C.
So you see, 86% thinking. Of course, it's something that you cannot do with your survey. Although the role of 107 complaints on video, a so-called tool, with what discretion? You call it preparation? Try preparation H. Because the problem deals with radio calls, 1. 2, it deals with training, inadequate training and use of what? Cameras. And the last is complaints. How do you deal with complaints, Soboroff? No answer. How do you deal with complaints? Minimize what? Transparency. And that's a fact. See, American people are tired of your so-called prejudice, bias policing under the color of the law. And while under the color of the law, you continue to be a racist organization called police commissioners. Not saying that Ms. Hill is not a part of the problem. She's not. It's you, Soboroff, a white male prejudice, not taking the perceived point of views and disposition of the people here today in complaint, like myself for the record. It's a complaint. You are biased, and the so-called, it's a very difficult word for me to pronounce because, see, I'm not a white educated Jew, but it is the, as brought out by the Inspector General, adjudicated bias police problem. And it is something the new Inspector General must investigate under the Baines Act and the Ralph M. Brown Act 54950, in addition to 42 U.S.C. 1983.
Adam Smith.
Mr. Smith?
This report states, in comparing the distribution of bias policing complaints initiated among the bureaus in the first 3 quarters of 2017 against the 3-year average, Valley Bureau had a lower proportion of bias policing complaints in the first 9 months of 2017. But as we found out in November, Captain Lillian Carranza of the Van Nuys Station said the LAPD, and I quote, engaged in a highly complex and elaborate cover-up in an attempt to hide the fact that command officers had been providing false crime figures to the public, attempting to convince the public that crime was not significantly increasing. These cover-ups allegedly included, for example, a 10% underreporting and misrepresentation of the number of aggravated assaults in Valley Division. If we assume for a second that Captain Carranza was telling the truth, can we really trust the numbers that the LAPD gives out on these reports? According to the report, the 3-year average for complaints is 274.3 complaints per year, with all of them eventually being found unfounded or whatever. Regarding how these complaints are dealt with, the report states, the department's adjudication process begins with the accused employee's commanding officer and goes through multiple levels of review. But as stated in the report, department managers have the say as to whether they find a complainant credible. In the first 9 months of 2017, almost 87% of biased policing complaints were adjudicated as unfounded. But as also stated in this report, black folks only make up 10% of the population. We see that 62% of the complainants are black. And I forget this man's name, and I don't mean any disrespect by that, but he stated that the majority were from traffic complaints and radio calls. And if we look specifically at the black community, who makes up the majority of the complaints.
You can finish up during public comment.
The next speaker, Michael Williams, followed by Jamie Garcia.
So I have two questions, which is, I don't care if the mic is up. I have two questions, which is, in the mediation process, what happens during the mediation process? Is there some kind of way of talking about what the issue is with the officer, or is it through a independent person who goes through and speaks on behalf of the individual and have a police there so that there's some kind of mediation? How does this mediation work? I came in late, so I might have missed it. You might have went over it. They haven't addressed it? They haven't said what this mediation looks like?
Someone wants to know what the process is for the mediation. Where would they find it? It's your last warning. Gentlemen?
Oh, certainly. There is an independent mediator, neutral mediator, but the parties do come together and actually face-to-face.
Both parties.
Both parties.
Both
Correct.
parties elect to come together.
That's correct.
And what happens when, this mediation is done and over and maybe there is no kind of reconciliation of what happened? What proceeds to go on from there?
Well, the complaint is closed at that point in time. However, it's...
So,
let him talk.
I'm sorry, but you said the complaint is closed at that time.
Okay.
But the complaint is closed at that time. Even if the complainants don't agree or don't come to some kind of agreement or settlement, it's just closed. Is that what I heard correctly?
What we're going to let you do is finish your comment, and then I'll ask them.
Okay, so that's concerning to me, that it's just closed without, I mean, if that's what you said, I don't know. Sober Office not giving you a chance to respond, and I'm not going to be able to give a chance to respond to what you said, right? But you basically said that even if it's not found to be mediated out, it's still just closed. There's no further investigation. There's no further investigation of whether this is bias. I think if somebody came into a mediation room and was still adamant that they had some violation done against them, I think that would be more of a reason to continue to.
Good. Thanks for your advice. So I will ask you, at the close of the process, what happens?
Well, as you noted, we have about an 86% satisfaction rate overall with the process. Sometimes there isn't an agreement. One party or the other, still believes what they did was correct. But at the outset, the agreement to go into mediation mediation isn't defined as agreement. It's to be able to air both sides and hopefully come to, some type of mutual understanding or mutual agreement. But, we engage in mediation, across the board, not just in this area. Mediation is a very common practice now in all kinds of litigation and all kinds of neighborhood disputes and all kinds of things. And it doesn't necessarily mean that there is always going to be agreement, but that is the goal. It's to be able to understand both party sides. And that's not always the result, but that's what the intention is. That's what we go for.
Thank you.
And the final speaker, Jamie Garcia.
Really talk about these surveys, but since they came up, I thought we would review what the surveys actually are showing. So this was done in November of 2006, or November of 2016 with the 2,000 more telephone surveys. So when it comes to LAPD officers doing a good job of interacting in their neighborhood, 42% of black respondents disagreed or strongly disagreed, as did 42% of those who identified as other races or ethnicities. Regarding do you view police officers as honest and trustworthy, only 47% of black respondents agreed or strongly agreed, compared to 87% of white folks. Regarding do you think police treat people in a fair and courteous manner, 63% of the black respondents agreed with this versus 83% of white. Regarding whether LAPD officers treat people of all races and ethnicities fairly, less than half of the respondents agreed or strongly agreed. Nearly 37%, or over one half of respondents, disagreed or strongly disagreed. Regarding race, 59% of black respondents disagreed or strongly disagreed. So there we have it. There we have results of these surveys that are going on. And these surveys are basically telling us again that the black community does not trust law enforcement. So we're here in end of 2017, and again with zero sustained. So we're basically telling us again we're a community of liars. People are coming to you saying we are being racially profiled, police are mistreating us, and again we are a community of liars. So there's obviously a big problem. Body cameras aren't helping us. Body cameras were stated to be something to protect the community, but what we're seeing is that they're a liability tool. Because what was stated is that these body cameras were showing that certain complaints were unfounded. So with dash cams aren't helping us, and where dash cams are going is that facial recognition technology is now going to be used in dash cams. And you stated that these community meetings are going to be happening.
You can finish up during public comment, it'd be fine. Thank you. We have a motion for approval of item number 2C, please.
Before we take the vote, I just want to say I would like to just say a couple of things. First, the recitation of the survey results from last year continue to be troubling. Continue to be troubling, period. It is patently incorrect to assert that this commission, and certainly from my perspective, the department in total takes this as insignificant or as something that is, continues to be sustainable or desirable. I do intend and expect to have this matter addressed in a much more comprehensive way in the upcoming months. With respect to the mediation and other efforts that the department has undertaken in order to address these long-term systemic issues, I want to offer my full-throated support. And just on the most genuine level, to say that it is serious, it is complex. We as a community have to grapple with this. It is not pleasant or easy, but I do believe that we can and will make progress. Let me say that I have to believe that. I'm committed to that, and I have worked with a number of people, both inside and outside this department over the course of the last year and several months who share that commitment. I look forward to and do make a public commitment to be far more visible and community focused in how I address this work. And I want to thank everyone who has and who continues to step up on this subject.
You want to make a motion for approval of the item?
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Anyone opposed? Okay, let's go to the item number 3.
Item number 3, report of the Chief of Police.
Thank you,
Chief Beck.
gentlemen.
Morning, Commissioners.
Morning, Chief.
So one significant item to report on. Last week we had a patrol officer severely injured on the 405 freeway during a early morning vehicle stop where he was his vehicle was hit from behind by a drunk driver, cutting off one of his legs. He is recovering in the hospital. I have visited him on multiple occasions. He's in good spirits. He is very desirous of coming back to work. He will be going through a long time of rehabilitation, and he has strong support of not only the police department, but his family. And so I wanted to make mention of him to the police commission, and to hope that everybody has him and his family in their thoughts over the holidays.
Thank you, sir.
You're welcome. Crime updates, and we'll be giving a much more in-depth discussion of crime at the first of the year in our annual conference. We're at 6.4% reduction in homicides. That's 271 homicides year to date versus 289 last year. This should be, God willing, the 8th year in a row that we have had under 300 homicides in the city of Los Angeles. To give you some idea how significant that is, the last time before this 8-year span that we had under 300 homicides, Chief Parker was the chief of police. We're down about 10.3% in rapes, up about 6% in robberies, primarily street robberies, up about 5% in aggravated assaults. Many of those are due to continued reclassification of what used to be simple assaults to ag assaults. This gives us a violent crime picture of increase of 4.2%. Property crime, we are just about even at a slightly under 1% increase in property crime year to date. That gives us a 1.8% total Part 1 crime increase over last year. People shot, which is one of the one of the primary indicators of our success in our gang violence reduction strategies. We're down 11.5%. We've had 988 people shot in the city of Los Angeles this year, as compared to just over 1,100 last year at this time.
I can't see who's doing that, but it's I know who it is. It's your last warning. We're trying to go on with the meeting. You have plenty of time to talk and say whatever you want at whatever pitch you want during public comment. Chief?
Thank you, Commissioner.
Professor Abdullah, that was your final warning. Professor Abdullah, that was your final warning. Okay, Chief?
Just to continue, gun seized, which is one of the mayor's initiatives, and something, of course, the police department not only embraces.
Johnson, please put your arm down. It's disrupting the meeting. If you put it up. Oh, who? I can't see who it is. It's who? Oh, Mr. Smith. Please put your arm down.
Oh, Williams, sir.
It's disrupting the meeting. If you can't do that, city attorney says that that's disruptive.
It's Michael Williams,
to me.
sir.
So either put your arm down. Yeah. Professor Abdullah, that was your final warning. I'm going to ask you to leave the meeting. Is this disruptive to you? It's your last warning. It's your last warning.
Can you not speak because an
I'm going to ask you to leave the meeting. I don't know your name, but I'm going to ask you to leave the meeting. Okay, we're just going to adjourn. If we come back and still here, then we'll just we'll continue. Okay. Officers, hold on. Abdullah, we've asked you to leave, so you won't be permitted back in. Sir, I don't know what your name is, but what's your name? I'd like him to leave, the man who's standing up in the plaid shirt. Mr. Smith. Okay. Yeah. Okay. So we're removing Abdullah and the gentleman in the green. Okay. There will not be disruption of Los Angeles Police Commission meetings. Happy holidays. This lady also would remove and not to be able to come back.
The Board of Police Commissioners meeting is in recess.
The police commission is now in recess. Everyone is requested to leave the room. If you do not leave on your own, you will not be readmitted.
Chief, will you continue with your report, please, sir? Okay, we're back in, commission's back in order.
Commissioner, I know there's some folks that want to address the commission, and I hope that you have time to hear them, and so I will waive my further report with the understanding that next year we'll have a much more complete discussion of crime and homicide and officer-involved shootings.
Thank you, Chief. Okay, let's go to item number 4, please.
We do have 2 cards, sir.
Oh, 2 cards on the chief?
3 cards in Paul.
3?
We have
Okay.
Mr. Herman, the Red Chief, and Yvonne Michelle Autry.
Now, with statistics fraudulently indicated regarding homicides, burglaries, is Van Nuys immune from burglary? That's been what it's said regarding the so-called whistleblower from LAPD, the nice female officer, that statistics have been forged. Now, who's lying here? The public should know. The public's aware of the so-called color of the law. That's why we were recessed, because a few individuals decided to raise their hand up and protest. It's no big deal, but you create a big deal. Now, is that part of the statistics? False arrest, Baines Act, 42 U.S.C. 1983, and what about the Ralph M. Brown Act, 54-950, etc.? Now, if we can't engage privately together as family, maybe we should just have this commission meet independently in another location so that the police can handle its role of statistics, lies, and the so-called DUI incident off the 405. Now, the reason why there was an incident, because we allow necessity for convenience and alcohol. Jose Huizar has a bar license, and why is that? Because he was involved in an incident of sexual misconduct, and I asked for him to resign. Now, as long as you continue to promote the DUI situation, promote commercial cannabis, Measure 64, and related substance abuse, whatever you may call it, is it the so-called pharmaceutical drugs? We don't know. They're all a part of the statistics and incidents you've created, Chief Charlie Beck.
Next speaker.
The Red Chief.
Thank you. The Red Chief on for the record. What I just watched was a whole bunch of illegal arrests based on the 409 and disturbing a public meeting. Disturbing a public meeting comes from stampeding, disruption, actual disruption. If you look at the article for $215,000, which you paid me out to, it goes over what disruption is, not holding your arm up. So here's what I'm going to do. Mr. City Attorney, I need your business card. Soberoff, I'm going to sue you individually. And Chief Beck, I'm going to file another complaint against you for false arrest. What you guys cannot do is keep on interrupting these public meetings based to you guys' convenience because you're a president or because you're the city attorney. And Chief Beck, you stood by and let it happen one more time. And you're up under fire about this, a disruption. It has to be an actual disruption. It tells you in the article from LA Times with the $215,000. Disruption is not doing this. Disruption is not doing that. You can stand up in this meeting. Look at all these cops. Are they disrupting your meeting? No. Can you charge them with a 409? No, but you keep on doing the same old thing. And trust me this, I do have the paperwork in my bag, and you can actually file for free now in the federal court. So let me warn you guys. You guys think that's just a joke, but it costs the cities millions and millions of dollars to process these cases. And you keep on making the same mistake over and over and over again. Chief Charlie Beck, I'm appalled with you. When you first came into office, you told me you wasn't going to do this little old bullshit, and you continue to do the same old bullshit. And the same laws you keep on breaking in federal court, you're still doing it today. I don't know, the lights are on, but nobody's home. Come on, work with me here. Stop the bullshit. Let these people protest. If you kneel, it's protesting. This is what public meetings are about. Now, if you disrupt it, you standing out saying something.
Thank you, sir.
Yvonne Michelle Autry.
Yes, I'd like to support what my colleague said, and also our right per First Amendment. We have a right to organize, we have a right to protest, we have a right to freedom of speech, we have a right to publish, and we have a right to petition our governing body. We have a right to protest. We have a right to protest. You're undermining our constitutional rights. So that being a violation, you're subject and you're completely liable. Aren't you tired of the suits that LA Can has successfully filed and other constituents for violating our civil rights? That being said, number one, I have been labeled a terrorist for over 25 years. I own no firearms. I'm peaceful. I go to church. I do yoga. I am a threat to you. Why? Because I'm one black woman that's not dead, that's not on Skid Row where your police officers can ritualize me, rape me, and say that I committed suicide like Sandra Bland, like Waukesha Williams, like Margaret Mitchell, and like the other nameless and faceless black women who are on the street. Okay, because I'm not a Jewish genius, or because, my skin is brown and I identify as black, and I still defend those that you have labeled for extinction, black people, people you put in the trash, people with undesirable faces, people whose organs that you're selling to Israel. I'm labeled a terrorist. Last week, there was a motion at City Hall to identify Muslims. So you're going to categorize as Muslim terrorists, quarantine us, much like Skid Row already is, with the sweeps of germ warfare, the police droppings with the horses. They don't clean it up. It spreads disease. Those people are being exterminated. We have a hygiene center, thank God. But, this is like 400 years overdue in the slated extinction of a black people that were brought here only to build this country. I want my reparations not in the form of police brutality or a tent on Skid Row. I'm exposing not only the murders of black people, but the means by which you are doing this. This must stop.
And we have one more speaker card from Michael Williams.
No martial law and no police state. Don't finance martial law and police state. Jamie Garcia put in a public comment as well.
We're on item
We're
number
not on
3.
public comment yet. It'll be next.
So I'm going to say the same thing I always say when I get up here and do the chief's report, because it's full of bullshit. Basically, I don't know if you ever saw this. It's been out for about a year, But there was an interesting article in the Washington Post that talked about the slowdown in the police slowdown in New York. It talked about the fact that police, because of the fact that their mayor actually had a backbone and actually tried to reform police in a significant way in their state and their city, the police actually decided, because they couldn't strike, that they were going to cause a complete slowdown. This slowdown particularly meant that there was 40% less arrests in the minor crimes. There was almost a 25% decrease in ticketed offenses or causes of ticketed offenses. And the police believed that because they were not going to be as much of them out, or they were not going to respond to as many calls, that there was going to be a drastic increase in crime and complaints in crime. And people were going to say, oh, we need the police, bring them back, stop all this reform talk. Well, much to their dismay, what actually ended up happening is that crimes, major crimes, things like homicides, rapes, robberies, aggravated assaults, all went down during this period of time, which was about a month, from the latter weeks of December to the early weeks of January. So for about a month, these crime statistics went down. Other crimes, and not saying that they're arrests, but the actual complaints for these crimes. So people actually complaining about rapes, murders, homicides went down under this slowdown. I mean, isn't that what I kind of been saying this whole entire time? That more police doesn't mean less crime? Overall, crime stayed pretty much the same during this slowdown, even though police weren't out harassing people and pulling people over for traffic violations. It's all in the statistics.
We have no other comment cards on this item. We're now on item number 4, public comment period. We have 9 cards. The first 3, Mr. Herman, Adam Smith, and Kimberly Hampton. Please state your name.
My name is Kimberly Hampton. I'm here on behalf of my son, Michael McLaughlin. I had to come here a while back and speak with you regarding the situation with my son. For some reason, some of your officers, you have some good officers, but you have some provocateurs that keep harassing my son. So on Sunday, they trumped up some charges against him, and because he couldn't answer some questions that they wanted. So he's in jail. And basically, they didn't even, the arresting officer, his name is Cherish Sharetta. And he was from the Valley Bureau, but he ended up in Mission. I don't know how, but he arrested him, and he got the watch commander to sign off on the booking approval without even questioning my son. So that was breaking the policy. And I'm here because I'm not going to sit here and say that I have like a beef with all cops, because I don't. Because I have family members that are police officers also. So I'm torn between this, because I am trying to get you, Chief Beck, to listen to me, help me out, and help me understand, why do you have these what are you going to do as a leader and as the overseer to get these bad apples to stop, doing stuff to innocent people like my son? So that's mainly what I am here for, to try to encourage you, to support you, because I believe in working together, community-based, working together. I'm not here angry, I'm not here bitter. I'm just trying to get answers from you. I believe that you can do it, and I believe me coming the way I do every time, you respond in a good way. So I'm here again and just trying to get your help again.
I have 2 people from Internal Affairs over here, and one of them will talk to you and get the information. We'll look into it.
Okay. And that's on the record, right?
That's good.
Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker, please.
So as you see, the result of bad policing, the result is my violations by Sergeant LeFew to enter this facility, denied access. What access am I talking about? Access to allow a service dog to be indiscriminately free from a dog bag. Cristina Garcia, the 58th District Assemblywoman, will look into this matter intensely now because I plan to file a lawsuit against an individual police officer, which he will know by name, Sergeant LeFew, and any other individual in this municipal corporation capacity for fucking with me and my service dog. You do more harm unreasonably, Mr. Soboroff, because even yourself can't even pay for your dog license after 15 years. You're a disgrace. And you want to insult me by raising my hand up like this? Let's go into the biblical times when the Jews persecuted an innocent man. Let's reflect on that. And yet you ordered the Romans to stake him out on a tree. So I'm not mentally disturbed like some of you. Those of you who are a 1 point what? Billionaire developer? A billionaire developer? There's something fucking wrong with you, Soboroff. There's really something really fucking wrong with you. You violate the Baines Act, you violate the Brown Act, you violate my civil rights under the ADA, Title II, Title III discrimination, along with those officers that you use to use enforcement against me. I have it on video. I have it here on video when you allowed that motherfucker to put his hands on me and push me out the door. And then you want me to be reasonable? Fuck you, Steve.
Next speaker, please.
The next speaker, Adam Smith, followed by Yvonne Michelle Autry and the Red Chief Hunt.
Mr. Smith?
I just wanted to get back. I had a little bit more to talk about regarding the biased policing. But with regards to what happened, I would like to preface that by pointing out that the system of police in this country was founded on controlling black bodies, and I think that you guys provided a great example of that today by criminalizing Mr. Williams' arm, criminalizing the other woman's right to free speech, and criminalizing Dr. Abdullah's voice. But going back to the biased police reports, so in the report it says department managers have a say as to whether they find a complainant credible, but what are the criteria for these department managers in presuming a complainant's credibility? Is there a body that looks at the bias, the potential bias of these individuals or representatives that are making this determination on someone's credibility? Looking at the Part 2 of Table 4 on page 23 of this report, it explicitly shows that, I forget the man's name that was here representing the department, but he said that traffic complaints and radio calls were the majority of where the complainants come from. But if you look at that Part 2 of Table 4 on page 23, the majority in the black community, and specifically black males, is traffic complaints, and then close behind it is pedestrian stops. If the majority of these, and it seems like all of them, are disregarded as unfounded, are we supposed to just like resign to the fact that maybe black men aren't the best pedestrians, like other ethnicities are better at walking down the sidewalk? Or do we actually have to look at more than a 4-hour implicit bias training for 93%?
Thank you. Yvonne Michelle Autry, followed by the Red Chief. And Jamie Garcia.
Yes, in the recent month, of course, with the exposition or actually the scapegoating of Harvey Weinstein, because it's not just Jewish men encouraging this fraternal Illuminati sacrifice and abuse of black women and other women. There are men of various races and colors, yes, black boule, honorary White House Negroes, Hispanic, Mexican mafia, Italian mafias, Russian mafias. There are men, of course, that are attacking women under the direct direction, I believe, of the Zionist Jewish people in maintenance of white supremacy, protection of the white female's privilege, no offense, because there are white women that are actually being violated. So Zionist male patriarchy. So you can't call me anti-Semitic. Okay, I've been sexually harassed by police officers. Yeah, one saying he wants to show me his power drill. I don't need it. I'm not in service. this. I do not want to be used. No super hot battery chargers, right? No return to slavery in this new world ordered one world governments, and how you are now moving to segregation again. Even Skid Row now is like a quarantine Jewish ghetto prior to the legalized extermination of a people. This is happening here. I'm no more a terrorist than these people exercising their civil rights. That I know that the Mexican men that follow me, touch their crotch, then their lips, and fold their hands as if to give me a blowjob. Again, I'm not the sex goddess. Okay, we're not returning back to this, this romantic type of Thomas Jefferson, Sally Hemings Venus. Okay, I do not participate in these orgies, and I'm sick of it. Isaac Shomoff owns the Alexandria, and he is allowing this sexual harassment. I do believe there's a black op, special op, undercover police officer living next door to me who is attacking me with the electronic weapon, shocking my vagina, my back, my neck all night, calling me
Next speaker, please.
The red Chief Hunt, please.
Mr. Hunt. Next speaker, please. You come back next week or the next time and talk during public comment, but your time's over now.
The next speaker, please.
Mr. Hunt. So this is your final warning, or I'm going to ask you to leave. Okay. I'm going to ask you to leave the meeting, please. Would you please escort the lady out? Okay, Mr. Hunt. Let's start the clock.
If you touch me, then I'm gonna stab you. Okay? No. I'm sick of this. I'm an honest and I'm a peaceful citizen. You hate black women. You fear us. Time to go. Let's go. And I'm still alive. And I don't use crack. And I'm not on the street. And you can't do this.
Okay, Mr. Hunt, go ahead.
Well, I'm gonna wait till all the fiasco.
You can go ahead. Let's start the clock.
No, let's wait till they finish their business.
It's okay. Let's start the clock, please. Go ahead, Mr. Hunt.
Here's the thing about this. I'm a 9th Circuit winner. I had 9 federal judges rule in my favor. I won in the 9th Circuit. I beat Chief Beck. I beat all of Los Angeles County Police or Los Angeles City Police. I beat you guys in Superior Court. Rip a new hole in the city attorney's ass. And this is very serious. I'm 3-0, sober off. I'm really want your position because you don't know what you're doing up there. You don't let the people talk. And actual disruption means you got to actually disrupt the meeting. The city attorney never weighs in on it. I'm just really appalled about Chief Beck. So is the National Lawyers Guild. So is the ACLU. Everybody really don't get you no more, Chief Beck. You sold out. You used to be, when you first came, you was for the people. Now you just for your own private interest. Sober off. I don't give a shit about you. And I'm going to tell you, you being president of this police commission is going to call a lawsuit. And I'm 3-0. I'm going for 4-0 with Chief Beck. I want to get them in depositions right away, so I'm going to go ahead and take care of that at the beginning of the next month. It ain't no joke with me. See, I know the paperwork. I know how to do the history. I know what I'm doing. And any attorney will represent me as soon as I come back with a valid claim, and it's cost the city over $2 or $3 million. And it's going to keep on costing the city because you guys don't know what you're doing. You guys say fuck the people, and the people are what makes this whole thing work. If it wasn't for the people, you guys wouldn't be here. It's called a public commission meeting. Hey, Mr. City Attorney, hey, you're going to be on a lawsuit. Your $40,000 or $50,000 will be in my pocket. Guaranteed. Chief Beck, your $250,000 a year, just send a check over to me.
The next 3 speakers, Jamie Garcia, Michael Williams, and Eugene.
Ms. Garcia?
So this room seems to have gotten quite fired up. And, you've triggered a lot of people. And it's unfortunate that you are so easily triggered, that being president and being in charge of this police commission and being in charge of LAPD, you have such little temper control. So, and, you know, I thought I wanted to reiterate the criminalization of the black body in this room, where it was a fist, where it was a voice, where we didn't even get we got pushed out of the room. So that's going to be interesting to see that on video and to see how that goes down, because people were actually pushed out of the room that weren't even targeted by your commands of who should be removed from the room. So I think that should be concerning to you as well. But I wanted to get back to this dash cam piece before the end of the year happens, because there was a CNN article that came out with Sergeant Daniel Gomez speaking about the partnership with Coben Technologies and the use of possibly bringing in dash cams with facial recognition technology. And he stated that there was going to be community meetings in regards to that, because we want to make sure that our civil rights aren't going to be violated, et cetera, et cetera. So I wanted to find out if any of you all knew about that. And Cynthia, I kind of said that if you don't mind a second after this meeting, I'd like to just touch base to see if that's even been addressed to the commission at all. And if you guys are aware of that technology that may be coming in, because I think that shows as to why a drone not having facial recognition technology really doesn't matter, because you're incorporating it into other facets of your tools within LAPD's architecture of surveillance. The last piece I just wanted to touch on real quick is that over the 1 million stops that were made in regards to this bias policing report, and there was only 100 or so bias policing complaints initiated. What's interesting is that those stops with the citations and with the field interview cards that are filled out are feeding Operation Laser. And so again, I'm bringing up Operation Laser because the community.
The next speaker, Michael Williams,
Mr. Williams?
followed by Eugene and Miss X.
This
Oops,
is
wait,
really
start over. Oh, sorry. I just wanted you to get the clock back. I didn't have the microphone on.
okay.
Start
And
over.
this is really like concerning because, I mean, aside from T. Fank and Charlie and Steve over here, the rest of you commissioners have a very interesting pit that you're in. Do you continue to support something that violates people's rights, that has no antiquated data or facts to back it up for the decisions that are being made by in this room, that has things like, when under just simple questions, your whole arguments fall apart? Like, all I did was ask whether or not the cases were filed, and Steve had to make some like grand gesture to make him say stuff that didn't really matter to what my question was asking. The question was whether or not, what happens after these mediations are done? And the answer was they just instantly become closed. So there's no further investigation of whether these complaints are valid or not. There's no any further investigation on whether or not the officer has further complaints about them. There's no further investigation on anything, even though the two parties did not agree or still are maintaining that they are right. So it just goes unfounded. That's a big hole. That's a big flaw in your system. And people are pointing this out, and you're doing nothing. So you have an interesting plot hole. Are you going to be with Steve and Charlie and T. Fank? Are you actually going to do something? Because the evidence, the facts, the statistics are not on your side here. They're not on your side. Historically, it's not on your side. So what are you going to do? Are you going to continue to allow this to continue to happen? Or are you going to do something?
Eugene.
Good morning. I've been going to these for a while now, about several weeks, and this is my first time speaking. And I'm sort of at a loss for words as far as how all of this seems to be working. Like, you guys are supposed to, the commissioner is supposed to represent us, the people, and you're supposed to work with us, and you're supposed to at least show at least concern for our complaints and what we're bringing forward, and it seems like you don't care. And there are valid questions like given to you guys throughout these meetings, and most of the times you don't seem interested in answering them, or valid concerns like moving the meeting to basically venue outside of the police commission, like they do in Pasadena, where they have it at a forum where the public feels comfortable in attending those meetings. And I don't understand why you guys don't take on models that work and basically try to help the people feel comfortable in going to these meetings, because that's who you're trying to serve. That's the trust you're trying to make. Unless you guys don't care for actually building trust with the community, unless this is all just a dog and pony show where you're just trying to, fool the public into thinking like, well, here, we tried. Look, we're doing something. But you can do something of value by actually taking on our concerns, taking on our questions, and actually following through on this. And I don't understand why you guys don't do it. I don't understand why you, Soboroff, don't listen to the people who come forward and bring forward valid points constantly and trying to change this whole venue, this whole. I'm sorry, this is just frustrating because this could work, but it just seems like no one cares, and this is going to end up poorly for everyone.
Thank you, sir.
Miss X, followed by Prentice Jenkins.
Yeah, good point, Eugene. I don't think they recognize what doesn't work. I mean, there's efforts here to try and penetrate this board, but there's a wall, and it's like just a masquerade here of justice, an avalanche of absurdities. It's difficult to even try and find logic in this room. I think there's some issues. I know you're trying to look for progress with racial bias. You asked, what are some more effective means of monitoring the day-to-day interactions, conclusions drawn, strategies to prepare officers and prevent racial biases. You're not going to find that progress here. I think when you try to conceptualize policing as something that needs reforms, or it needs to be professionalized or moderated, you miss that the very nature of policing, it serves to maintain and exacerbate racial inequality. And so calling for like colorblind law and order or improving racial biases, all it does is strengthen a system that puts people of color at a structural disadvantage. And it's hard to see, like, how do you not see that? How do you not see that? So when you focus on reforms, you fail to appreciate that the basic nature of policing since its earliest origins have been for a tool for managing inequality and maintaining the status quo. So any reforms fail to address this reality will be doomed. There's no hope for reform. And the burden falls and will continue to fall on communities of color. That's how the system's designed to operate, not because of biases or any misunderstanding.
Prentice Jenkins.
Mr. Jenkins.
Prentice Jenkins, founder of Peace Between Residents and Police. Good morning, President Soboroff. It's good to see you. Good to see you too, Chief. I'm the flag bearer of justice for Waukesha Wilson and all the others who were killed by the 1%. I'm also the flag bearer for all the 99% of officers who are out there doing their job. You'll continue to have my support. I'll continue to support you, continue to support you, Chief. I saw the officers out on the beat, walking the pavement. Haven't seen that for, 100 years? I found out the reason they did that 100 years ago is because you didn't have a lot of cars, so they had to walk. And many of them became alcoholics because it was cold out there and they had to walk. So you're doing a lot of walking in the freezing cold. I guess you have to take, some type of libations to to keep warm. I'm going to talk a little bit about that last election. Romney got 72% of all the votes cast in that election were white. Romney got 59%. He lost. Trump only got 58%. And he won. He got 29% of the Latino vote. Trump did. Romney got 26%. Romney asked Trump, "You got virtually the same numbers as I did. How did you win?" Trump said, "Ancient Chinese secret, my friend." Remember that commercial? Yeah. So what happened was the touchscreens, they hacked the touchscreens and put the virus in there. So for every 7 people that went and voted for Hillary, 2 would flip for Trump. He said, "You just don't know how I did it. I didn't win the election, but I got in the White House."
And we have no other comments for general public comments, sir.
Okay. Go to the closed session items.
Okay, we're on item number 5, closed session items. We have 3 comment cards for 5A1. We have Prentice Jenkins, Yvonne Michelle Autry, and Mr. Herman. Okay. Mr. Herman?
Don't shoot, don't shoot. I too have a K9 service dog. And what does that reflect? It reflects an officer-involved shooting, an OIS. Revisiting the capital K/9. I can relate to that. I recall when I lived in Boyle Heights and your officers jumped over our fence and knocked it over and destroyed it, and they took a shot at my parents' dog. The address was 3131 Folsom Street, 90063 for the record, if you want to go back into the archives and find that out. You see, when you bring emotional stress and harm, not just to a canine service dog, or that to an officer / to police officer, it is to remind you of an occurrence, a date of action that impacts and has adverse negative declaration on one's health, safety, and concern, like that of mine and many people here today, who by the use of service dogs, or I should call it a canine, can cause very, very, very bad bodily injury. Now, there's not enough information on the OIS here to indicate what occurred, but I could sure hell tell you that when certain police officers abused dogs and forced them to attack an unarmed civilian who's trying to escape the dog bites, I'll tell you, I know what it feels like. That reason is why you continue to violate my rights and my civil rights under the ADA.
We have Mr. Herman on item 5A2.
Now this involves Flores, TM, a party, as it's called. But it involves 4 officers. That of 1 police officer 1 / 2 officer police 3 / officer 2 police, and 2 sergeants. All these officers involved in a shooting? What are you afraid of when there are that many officers involved in a shooting? Why can't one officer just take out his Glock and poof? Why do you have to go gun-ho and kill people? The same way you did to Stephen Brown when you viciously beat him. Although that's a beating incident, this is an involved shooting. How many times have we heard about involved shootings? multiple times. And what has this commission done to resolve an OIS? And this particular incident is number 00217. Although the conflict of interest is the Inspector General giving us detailed information in regards to why the involved party, participating party of that of MT Flores occurrence happened on January 9th, 2017. You see, these incidents of involved shootings are similar to that when the Jews persecuted an innocent man on a Christmas tree.
We have Mr. Herman on 5A3.
Is he the only one on 5A3?
Yes, sir.
Herman?
Yes, sir. That's my name, for the record. Herman, capital H. As you see, on an occurrence of what? January 10th, 2017, this incident only involves one officer. 3 incidents involving officers, however, 2 incidents involving a shooting. Was it a shooting with a hand revolver? Doesn't say here. Was it an incident involving a 12-gauge shotgun? Or was it an incident involving excessive force by multiple gunshots to a victim who is trying to escape his persecutors? Doesn't that occur usually? I know I couldn't shoot down a man who's running away with his back to me, because I want to see the man die in front of me. I want to see his action. I want to know why the officer involved shooting happened. I want to see why the man deserved multiple gunshots. But see, when you're involved on the issue of number 00317, that of M.D. Reyes, did I pronounce that correctly, Mr. City Attorney? Since you're not involved in the response, you would care less. For that reason, Stephen Brown sued the city of Los Angeles. And anyone who believes you were incidentally taken for the wrong shot, 1 kill, ask Steve Soboroff, the 1 kill unlicensed veteran.
We have no other comment cards, sir.
Okay, let's go to closed session.
Okay. The Board of Police Commissioners will now recess into closed session to discuss item number 5A1, 2, and 3 in accordance with Government Code 54957.
Person didn't bail out of jail yet either?
Oh, that's right. Being reported out and to the consent calendar.
The Board of Police Commissioners has concluded its work in closed session. We are back in open session. In closed session, item number 5A1 was discussed and the chief's recommendations were unanimously adopted. In closed session, item number 5A2 was discussed and the chief's recommendations were unanimously adopted. And in closed session, item number 5A3 was discussed and the chief's recommendations were unanimously adopted. We are now going to item number 1, consent agenda items.
Okay,
I'd like to move the consent calendar.
we want to move all A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H, I, and J. Second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay. No one opposed? Those are moved.
Okay, is there a
Meeting
motion?
is
Move to adjourn.
Yeah, we played that.